Hello, welcome back to the nervous system. This is our second set of notes, and this is going to be our last set of notes for the course, where we're going to be looking at some of the foundational senses. We've talked about a whole whack ton of all the body senses that we have, but we're going to break it down into the foundational ones, the ones that you would have learned about when you were younger, things like touch, taste, smell, hearing, sight, that kind of thing. So try to understand what's going on with a couple of these. Some of this is going to be review because we've talked about the sensory receptors that we have in our body. We like to define them in two ways, either as exterior receptors or interior receptors. Exterior receptors respond to things outside of the body, whereas interior are going to be inside of the body. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Both are involved in homeostasis, but maybe not directly. Interior, for instance, if there is a change inside of the body that's required for you to stay alive, your body's going to respond accordingly. So, for instance, if you're thirsty, it's because your body is low on fluids, on water. So, it's going to cause you to get more water into your system, and it's going to increase those symptoms until you do finally get that drink of water. Something external, on the other hand, would be like a sensation from sound, where if you're walking along the train tracks for whatever reason and you hear the sound of a train off in the distance, that is alerting you to the fact that there is a train coming on the tracks. But then you have to respond accordingly. So the sound isn't saving your life, it's you responding and moving off the tracks as a result. So the exterior receptors are they're indirectly involved with that homeostasis. In terms of receptors, we got a whole bunch of different kinds. We're going to be looking at chemoreceptors for chemical changes, photoreceptors for light changes, mechanoreceptors. These are going to change based on how things touch you and how you're sensitized to the way things touch you. And then thermoreceptors, lastly, are temperature regulators. So, how your body is going to respond to temperature changes and recognize what the temperature is in a situation. I've added this little table here from the textbook that we're basing everything off of. Um, I'm not going to test you on this information directly, but if you want to look at the receptors, where they are, and what they do, just as kind of wrapping everything together, that is here for you to look at. But don't expect me to be posting this on your test or anything like that. When we talk about a sensation, we've talked about this many, many times, but just to review to make sure we understand it, a sensation is when something, a stimulus, is going to trigger a nerve impulse to enter the central nervous system. Now, if we take it one step further, those sensations can come in from all sorts of stimuli. How you perceive them is going to change. Here's an example. Consider your favorite genre of music. If somebody else who doesn't like that genre of music listens to, say, the same song as you, you're both getting the same sensation, you're getting the same stimulus, but your perception of the sounds are different. So that's going to cause you to have a positive perception to, say, I don't know, rock music or country music, whereas somebody else is going to have a negative or uncomfortable perception from the same genre. We got to be careful with this because we often commit ourselves almost as if we have a reflex when we get one of these sensations and we perceive it the same way. But we should recognize that a reflex is also a learned ability. You know, if you don't like country music, if you listen to country music without the without perhaps the predisposed sensation or idea that you're going to dislike it, then your perception might be different. Also very common with food cuisine. Maybe you had one experience eating Thai food and it made you sick. And then you go to a friend's birthday and they're having Thai food and you're not too thrilled about that. If instead of responding to the reflex, if instead you decide, you know what, I'll give this a try, maybe I'll learn something different about it, then you might have a different response. Then you might actually enjoy it. Your perception might be different. So it just depends on how that perception comes in and how that responds to the reflex in your body. So just this image, we've seen this before. Stimulus comes in, it goes to your receptor. Receptor causes a nerve impulse either to your spine or to your brain. Either way, it ends up into your central nervous system, and then you respond. You have an effect as a result of it. First off, we're going to talk about proprioception. Proprioception are mechanoreceptors. You're going to find them in your muscles and your tendons, and they give you an idea of where your body is. So they give you some body sense. If you want to try this activity out, or this activity, if you want to try an example of your proprioceptors in action, you can you can attempt to identify your body sense by trying to balance on one foot. I recommend balancing on your dominant foot and feel the sensation on the bottom, on the soles of your feet. You're going to feel your foot constantly adjusting itself because of the proprioception in that foot. Now, proprioception doesn't keep your balance all on its own. You need to have body sense with other sensations as well. As humans, we also rely on vision. So if you try the same activity, if you try to balance on that one foot and close your eyes, now you don't have enough signal coming into your body where your foot is going to go crazy, bouncing all over the place, but you're not going to be able to keep your balance as a result because you don't have that full connection. You only have proprioception. If you want to bypass this a little bit, depends on who you are. Try balancing now with your eyes closed on your non-dominant foot. Because it's your non-dominant foot, we don't rely on muscles so much. You rely more on just those receptors that keep your balance. So you should be a little bit better on your left side because you have fewer muscles on, say, your left side if that's your non-dominant side. Or, of course, if you're left-handed, it'll be on your right side as your non-dominant side. These are all different details about proprioceptors. Also recognize that they are also going to tell you the limit of what your body has. So, for instance, your posture. When you're sitting, you have mechanoreceptors constantly firing to make sure your body keeps its shape. In the same way that your legs are constantly firing when you're trying to balance on 1 or 2 feet, all the muscles in your back are constantly firing to keep your back straight if you have decent posture, or to slouch if you have not so good posture, and so on and so forth. Another way that you can test this out is called a knee jerk reflex. And you might have experienced this before. I'm sure you have. Every time you go to the doctors, they often sit you down, not every time. Occasionally, when you go to the doctors, they sit you down on either the table or on the bed, and you have your legs dangling off the end. I'm going to show you an image as we look at this one here. They have your legs dangling off the edge. And they're going to take this little hammer and they're going to gently hammer this little tendon right here where my mouse is. And that's going to cause your leg to kick forwards. It's called the knee jerk reflex. This is just testing to see if your mechanoreceptors are working. They're testing to see if your nervous system is working. If you have a nervous disorder, there's a good chance that when they tap your knee like that, your leg will not kick. As a result, we can quickly diagnose without cutting you open that there might be some nervous or nerve damage in your body. On the flip side, no matter how hard you try, you will not be able to resist that urge to kick. Hard to do it to yourself, but if you got a family member at home, you want to test it out on them, have them sit somewhere where their legs are dangling. They can't physically lift their legs up. And if their legs are dangling, you want to hit this tendon just below the kneecap and just chop it with the side of your arm. They will kick their leg. They cannot stop it because it is a muscle reflex. It's the knee jerk reflex. Just to double check though, doctors often test a second test as well, and that's on the bottom, on the sole of your foot. And they'll take the back of their hammer, which is not sharp, but it's not dull either, and they'll just scrape the bottom of your foot. And what's going to happen is if you do have that reflex, you will also curl your toes inwards. If you don't curl your toes as a result, you might have an issue with some nervous damage. But it's an easy way to diagnose without cutting someone open, which is pretty cool. Couple other receptors that we can have. These are called cutaneous receptors. These are found in your skin. Your skin has multiple layers, so you're going to have various different receptors. For instance, we have fine touch receptors. One of them is called a Meissner corpuscle. You're going to find them on your hands, your fingertips, and on your palms because we use your hands to touch and feel all the time. You have them on your lips because we also want to make sure we understand the food coming into our mouth, so you have a lot of sensation there. You also find them near the reproductive organs, so on the head of a penis or on a clitoris. You'll also find lots of Meissner corpuscles for fine touch sensitivity. You're also going to find what are called Merkel discs. These are found in the junction between two layers of your skin, dermis and the epidermis. And as your skin slides, you can get some sort of sensation on your Merkel discs. And I'll show you a picture of this shortly. One of the most interesting ones are the root hair plexes or singular root hair plexus. These are free nerve endings. They're nerves that are wrapped around the end of your hair follicles. This is why it hurts when you have your hair pulled, because when you pull on your hair, when something pulls your hair, it's connected to a nerve. You're getting a nerve sensation, you're getting a pain sensation as a result. So if you ever get a band-aid or something and it's on a hairy part of your body, they always say to rip it off really fast. If you rip it off very slowly, what's happening is you're pulling on each individual hair and you're getting individual pain sensations, and then they start to add up, they start to integrate, and they hurt a lot more. The idea of ripping a band-aid off really fast is that You're activating all those nerve sensations at the same time, and that integration can only go so far, and you're not going to feel that pain beyond that. So it's a lot easier to just rip it off if that's ever the case. A really cool evolutionary thing too. It's not such a big deal with humans. You can kind of feel it, like if you walk into a room and there's like a change in the air. I don't know, maybe the air conditioner comes on or something. You can feel it on your hair, or in the summer, especially if you're out in I don't know, like I know like the Whiteshell area, or if you're up in northern or central Manitoba, somewhere where there's more nature, you're gonna find more bugs as well. And if a bug sits on you, if you've got hair on your skin or on your head or anywhere in your body, you can feel something walking along your hair because you have this root hair plexus. Not only does it respond to pain, but it also responds to fine touch. That's why it's a fine touch receptor. Other animals are really good with this. If you have a cat, you can try this test out. Usually works on a younger cat, one that doesn't recognize your various body, your changes, your environmental changes. But if you sneak up on a younger cat, let's say it's sleeping in a room somewhere, and you sneak into the room and you're completely quiet, completely silent, that cat will still look up, it'll wake up and look right at you. The reason why is because when you enter the room, you're changing the airflow in the room. The temperature tends to get a little bit warmer because you're warm blooded, and you're still breathing, so there's an airflow change as well. This is detected on the hair of the cat. It recognizes this, and they'll look up and they'll look at you just to see what's going on with that situation. Older cats, if they recognize that it's you, like that change is something that they can connect to you, they honestly don't care. They'll just sleep, so they won't really change anything there. We've also got a couple of different pressure receptors. They change as touch is initiated on the body. So you can kind of see that on the image here. Up at the top here, we got the dermis, and then this blue region here is what we call, sorry, this top region is what's called the epidermis, and then this blue region is called the dermis. So two different layers of skin. You can see your hair goes very deep into there, but in the very tip of your hair where the follicle is, you've got these nerve endings on them. We've also got a whole bunch of different touch receptors. If someone was to touch your skin, it's going to put some pressure on any of these, and you're going to get some sort of response as a result of that. And that brings us to pain receptors. Pain receptors are just free nerve endings. If there is some sort of connection to those nerve endings, then that gets a stimulus to your body, you experience pain. So, best example of that is nociception. You get something sharp and you poke your finger, you feel that poke. The more nociceptors you have, the more sensation you get. So, for instance, your fingertips have a lot of fine touch. So, if you took, say, two, three, four sharp pencils and you poked your finger, you would feel two, three, or four sharp pokes. Even if you're blindfolded and someone did that to your hand, you would feel four individual pokes. Whereas if they did the exact same thing on your back, you'd only feel it as one because you don't have as many free nerve endings there. You don't touch as much in that part of your body. Other issues that you might see is if someone is, let's say you sprained your ankle or something like that. This is because you have, or the reason why you're experiencing pain is because when you damage part of your tissues, you lose tissue fluids. That's why you swell. And the swelling causes pain because those fluids are touching or putting pressure on those free nerve endings. And that's what's causing the pain. So that's why we try to compress one of those injuries to prevent that fluid buildup. And then hopefully you don't experience the pain soon afterwards because the nerve endings aren't actually hit. Another interesting one is called referred pain. Referred pain is when you get a pain in a part of your body that is not associated with the part of your body that's actually hurting. So, heart pain, for example, not a lot of free nerve endings here because you've got a lot of other organs. You got your heart, you've got your thymus, your lungs are in this region. So, if you ever have heart pain, you often feel it on the left side of your body. So, the left limbs, you'll feel it in your shoulder or in your arm. If there's someone older that you know and they're experiencing pain on the left side of their body, maybe consider taking them to urgent care because there's a good chance that they're having some sort of heart issue. It could be as bad as a heart attack, so you got to be aware of that. For strokes, if someone's having a stroke, same idea. You have to put their arms above their heads, and often it's a left arm that doesn't come up, which means that they might actually have a sign of having a stroke. So that's a good chance that you want to call 911 in that situation. Other examples of referred pain. If you ever have a signal going through your body, just like any electrical signal, you lose some of that charge, but you have all these other nerve endings that another nerve ending can pick up a lost electrical charge, and that can end up on a different part of your body. This we experience as an itch. So whenever you get something itchy, it's probably because your body's trying to send a signal somewhere. It gets to the wrong place. You experience an itch. Itches can also be due to irritation, where something is on your body, is triggering your skin, your touch receptors, and it doesn't really know what it's sending messages to. So you're getting these really small sensations which cause an itch. It could also happen if you're like if you sweat a lot, you've lost a lot of sodium. As a result, you might feel a little bit itchy because sodium is involved in that electrical impulse, that depolarization. So if you don't have that inside of your nerve endings, then those signals get lost and they can end up in other places, like on the surface of your skin where you experience that. Another example of referred pain is if you ever had brain freeze before. Brain freeze, you're consuming something cold that's going down towards your digestive system, but you experience pain in your head, in your brain. This is because when you swallow that cold food, beverage, whatever it is, it's touching the vagus nerve, which is going upwards into your brain, and it cools the vagus nerve. And so that cuts that signal into little bits, and then you start to experience that as pain. We also get those in other parts of our body. If you're outside in like a Manitoba winter, -40, you notice your fingers get really numb after a while. And when you come back into a warm place, it starts to like prickle and hurt a little bit. Or if you've been in a really cold swimming pool and then you jump in the hot tub, you feel like this really weird, sharp, prickly sensation. This is all as a result of a similar case to that referred pain. That brings us into the sense of taste and smell. Both of these are decent. Just check the time to make sure we're good here. Both of these are decent sensations that we can recognize, but one of them is significantly better than the other, and that one's not going to be taste. Your taste reception is actually really bad because most of your taste is actually your smell. In fact, when you taste something, the only time you've probably ever really taste something the way that it's meant to be tasted is if you've ever had a cold, when your nose gets all plugged up and you can't smell anything and then things taste weird. That's what things actually taste like. You get these different receptions in your tongue, your hard palate, your pharynx, which is your throat and that epiglottis area. If you ever had an aftertaste, it's your throat tasting things and not your tongue. But your taste is often influenced by the way that your brain is getting a smell signal as well. When you taste things, there are different sensations you get, often sweet, salty, sour, and bitter, which are different regions of your tongue. So when you eat foods that are intended on being sweet, they should touch the front of your mouth first, where the tip of your tongue is, and you'll enjoy them better. If for some reason you're eating a chocolate bar and you're putting it deep down the middle to the back of your tongue, you're not going to enjoy it as much. It's going to be uncomfortable and it's not going to taste right because you're activating the bitter parts of your tongue instead. If you take something that's sweet and you move it to the side of your mouth, one, chances are you're going to get a cavity as a result because that's a really easy way to get cavities. But two, that's the salty and the sour region, so you're not going to get that same sensation. If there are foods that you don't like, chances are you just put them on the wrong part of your tongue. And that's not you doing anything wrong. That's just the way that we eat, right? Like people don't like bitter things very often. But that's because to really appreciate bitters, you got to put them deeper, like further down on the deeper part of your tongue. And nobody eats by sticking something deep on the further part of their tongue. That's just kind of weird. But that is a possibility depending on what you're consuming. Your taste palette changes, and you learn how to manipulate things in your mouth using your tongue. For example, a very common additive in drinks are an ingredient called bitters. Bitters, because you're having a beverage, you're able to put it on the back of your tongue very easily because fluids are very easy to manipulate. Or wine tasting is also a good example. Wines are designed to have notes of various different flavors on them, and you can swirl the wine into different parts of your mouth to experience these different sensations. And if you do it right, and if the wine is good enough, people get some very, very intense sensations of taste. And that's when you're actually using your taste buds to their full capabilities. All those chefs that make like 100 grand for putting a teeny tiny thing on a small plate and posting a picture on Instagram, the reason why they're as famous as they are is chances are at some point they figured out this whole idea of sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and then a fifth one called umami. And they're able to make dishes that activate these different sensations with the littlest effort from the person that's actually eating them. So it's an interesting thing there with taste buds. The way that taste buds work is your tongue is full of a whole bunch of these little teeny tiny holes. A chemical, which is from your food, falls into one of these holes, and inside of those holes, there are these different bulbs, kind of like onion bulbs. And this is where that taste is going into your taste bud and sending a signal to your brain. The way we average out all these tastes is how you perceive the taste. So you can't take something that's sweet, something that's salty, something that's bitter, mash them together, throw them in your mouth, and expect a good sensation. You're going to get an amalgamation of all of them, and it's not going to taste great. But if you can have foods that have various different parts of these flavors, depending on how you chew them and how they change, then you get different perceived tastes as well. Here's a picture of what your taste buds look like. So you got a mouth over here. You can see from a micrograph that there are a whole bunch of teeny tiny little holes in between. If you go into them, you can see that there are little bulbs across the sides as well. And the bulbs have those free nerve endings in them. And that's how the signals get to your brain. You can block these very easily as well. Some foods will coat your tongue. And if you have your tongue coated, you can't get sensations coming in. So if you look in the mirror, if your tongue has a lot of white on it, you're coated in bacteria, which we talked about in the digestive system. You probably should be brushing your tongue alongside brushing your teeth to not have that situation. Other sticky foods can cause that too. Wines, eventually, if they're cheaper, they will coat your tongue. Dairy products often coat your tongue. Toothpaste very frequently coats many parts of your tongue, and that's why things taste really weird when you consume them after toothpaste. Like, if you ever had an orange juice after brushing your teeth, it doesn't taste sweet anymore because you blocked all your sweet taste buds. You only get occasionally some sensations of sour because you don't often brush the side of your mouth very well, but you get lots of bitter because the back of your tongue often isn't reachable by your toothbrush. So you get lots of bitter taste as a result. In addition to the sense of taste, we got the sense of smell. And as I was saying, sense of smell is way better. In fact, the majority of what you taste is actually going to be your smell. An activity that I wanted to do and I wasn't able to do in class because of all the COVID measures, I could trick you into eating a potato and thinking it's an apple. And it's very easy to do that. All you gotta do is blindfold someone. You can do this at home if you want to try it out. You blindfold someone, you put a wedge of something that they might like under their nose. For example, take an apple slice, put it under someone's nose, and they are smelling an apple. Then you feed them a wedge of something with a similar texture, like a potato. Because they are smelling the apple, their brain will think that they are eating an apple, and as a result, they will eat an entire potato wedge, a raw potato wedge, thinking that it's an apple, and they'll enjoy it as if it was an apple as well. So, kind of interesting how that works. The way that your nose works is in the deeper part of your nose, you're just about connected to your brain with these olfactory cilia. Olfactory cilia connect to the olfactory lobe, which is a part of your temporal lobe. So you get that smell sensation coming in. Because it's almost directly connected to your brain, you can get emotional triggers or some memory triggers as a result of smell. So maybe you smell something that reminds you of, I don't know, maybe every Christmas or every Thanksgiving you have the same meal with your family, and you walk into someone else's house and it smells, it's the middle of June or July, and it smells like your home on Thanksgiving or Christmas. All of a sudden you're flooded with all these emotions and memories of Thanksgiving or Christmas because the smells are so impactful. A lot of companies will use this to their advantage. A lot of grocery stores, for instance, you won't walk in and see all of the meats because they don't smell as nice as the breads or the fresh produce. A lot of pardon me. A lot of grocery stores like to have their fresh produce at the front of the store because when you walk in, you smell the freshness. It smells like a farm or smells like a garden, so you feel like you're getting fresh food. When that's just kind of a trick we're playing on the brain, we're tricking you into bringing you into a mental state where you are at a garden or a farm. Same thing with a bakery. Not too many people have lived in bakeries, but you notice a lot of rural places often have bakeries at the front of their grocery stores because that's a more common thing that people can associate with. So here's the structure of the brain nasal cavity. Scent comes into your nose. These are your olfactory cilia, and you can see they're connected directly to this temporal lobe here. This is your olfactory bulb, and that's sending the signal into your brain for a smell sensation. And that brings us to the sense of vision. The very next chance I get to record this, I will do so, and we'll wrap up on your senses with vision and with what else is left? Vision and hearing. Anyways, we're going to pause here because this is getting a bit long, so we'll pause here and then we'll pick up on things with vision. Thank you for watching, and if any questions come up, feel free to let me know.